All right, gentlemen, we're very excited for today's episode. We're catching up with the one and only Todd Newton, the actual host with the most. Copyright on that phrase. Todd stepped into host Wild On for a moment before becoming the face of E's red carpet coverage. He was Mr. E, the face of E Entertainment. I've got with me former producers Paul Haddad, Carrie Millman, and it's me, of course, Sean Olson. We're taking it back to those early days when the show was taking off, and we're sharing some of our weirder stories from Mardi Gras, Tomatina. Carrie, any weird stories you can remember?
Oh, God. Jeez.
Much more of that. So buckle up because we're about to get wild.
Someone get Carrie a drink, too.
Yeah.
You want to up your memory.
Should I take my shirt off now, or does that come later?
This is the untold story, the behind-the-scenes mayhem, the chaos the viewers never saw, and the unforgettable tale of the most infamous travel show of its time. This is the wildest show on earth, the rise and fall of Wild On. All right, gentlemen, let me set the table for you here. It was the year 2000, the dawn of a new millennium, and Wild On was hitting its stride. Television was pushing the envelope, testing the limits of what could be on air. Reality TV was in its infancy, talk shows were going off the rails, and the cultural diet was leaning towards depravity and decadence. Wild On was no exception. The marching orders were simple: make it titillating, make it provocative, and make it clean, sexy, fun. Paul, when you guys think clean, sexy, fun, what comes to mind?
I think of a Post-it that Scott Woodward had on his computer with that phrase, clean,
Seriously?
sexy, fun on it. Yes, to remind himself that was the mantra
So
of
Scott
Wild
Woodward was our executive producer.
Scott Woodward's the executive producer under John Ryber, who was the brainchild of Wild On.
Yes.
When I think of Scott, all I think about is hands behind the head, feet up on the desk. All right, so what are you guys going to do? It was never like a we. It was like, so how are you going to do that?
Which
like,
we appreciated
Yes,
because he
true.
put
Yes.
the onus on you rather than telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And so he knew this is your show to produce. Wow me somehow.
Yeah.
And I actually would love to have Scott on this at some point. I felt bad because I think we gave Scott probably a hard time a lot of times. But no, I super appreciate that freedom that he gave us.
Me too. I think that was important because he knew you had to be quick on your feet when you're a producer in the field. Things can go wrong. I would make sure to hit up our production money department for bribe money because sometimes you're glad palming people. You're in some countries where that's part of the language. That's how you get stuff done, is by like slipping this guy $100 and he takes you on a boat to the mouth of a volcano that you want to get, or sometimes it shows up just as a thank you to someone who's shown you the ropes and maybe lent you some local talent who showed you like a restaurant or a club, and now you have to pay the piper. So you had to be flexible. Up to that point, Wild On was its own little island. We were kind of, we did things our own way because the shows were so cheap, and yet we had to travel around the world. So as long as we could bring it in on budget, whatever it took, we were responsible for, and E kind of accepted that. Yeah. But then when things became more corporate, and we're talking like, the early 2000s, and I remember doing a shoot in Bali, and I worked out, again, because we did things on our own, I worked out a deal with Qantas that we could shoot on their plane for like a little 10, 20-second segment and get first-class tickets to and from on Qantas,
Right.
from L.A. to Indonesia, through Australia or whatever it was. And I think I got pushback from ad sales because it was, again, more corporate then, and they said, well, you can't do trade out with Qantas. We have an agreement with Korean Air or Korea Air or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, well, I've already got, the trade out done. Well, next time you need to go through us because they've taken out ad space on E. Yeah. Qantas doesn't. That, I remember, started becoming a problem of getting the shows in on budget because they kind of removed all those comps we were getting.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we did more trade-outs for hotels, all the luxury hotels, the flights, everything was because of us and our work.
Yeah.
And I remember your dad
Yeah, got
gave us satellite phones.
Yeah, you worked for Qualcomm. So
Yes,
you
he worked for
got
Qualcomm.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
remember when I did Cyprus, you got me one, and I was just calling everybody back home. I was like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
I'm here. But
that was also a trade out. I said
Yeah.
he put his put Qualcomm.
Yeah.
I don't
I
think
remember the
there was not
Qualcomm
really
logos.
much return on investment on that one, but
So that
yeah.
was you. I remember the Qualcomm logos at the end of shows.
Yeah.
Qualcomm.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We can thank Mr. Olson Sr.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Denny Olson. Shout out to Denny Olson. I want to talk about, the show's expanding, and I think the fame started growing, and with that, I think the experiences got bigger, and so we had just really crazy trips, and I can name several. Are there any that come to mind off the top of your head, like any wild or weird trips?
I think by far one of mine was Ibiza, and I did it with Chad. And so Chad was another producer. And I'd also had APs like Schumann, who did nothing. Who were only there.
Message for Schumann.
Yeah, exactly. For Schumann and Fro and Ross for a while, that all were great at partying, but not really doing the job that was needed of helping support the producer and helping do things. So with that said, when I got to go to Ibiza with Chad, I was like, well, I'm now going to be like Fro, Ross, or Schumann and do very little and just party my ass off. And so Chad, I'm sure,
I like how you're outing them.
did not appreciate that by any means, I'm sure. But Kalor was the main money donor on that episode and flew us over and had their own house with DJs, and we went all clubbing and whatever. We're in Ibiza, obviously, and there are mega clubs there. I've never been in a club with 20,000 people with flamethrowers and acrobats and all these crazy things going on that it was just mind-blowing. It was a mind-blowing experience. And, unfortunately, we did a lot of drugs and alcohol like the people that were doing that there.
Well, it was also a bit of that era. I mean,
Yes.
So yeah, it was just everywhere. And again, now our profile is higher, and everybody sees the e-bug, and they're coming at us, and so they're giving us stuff. It's coming at you. People want to get you shots. They want to get you drunk. They're giving us drugs. So yeah, it was inevitability. I feel like it's just, and we're young. We're in our 20s.
Well, that was the thing. And so let me just finish the story real
Sure,
fast.
I'm sorry.
And we were in a club, and Brooke was getting a DJ lesson, how to DJ. And I don't know, the music, everything, I just felt really crappy. And I was like, I'm going to go outside and sit in the van for a little bit. So I left Chad, the crew, everybody there. So I'm literally just trying to take a little siesta in the van and tap in two federales. They're in full military garb with machine guns, are get out. And I'm like, oh God. And, we had a lot of drugs in the glove compartment box that were either given to us or bought by us, whatever. And I was like, oh, my God. And they start going through the car, looking for anything. And I'm like, how am I going to explain this to Scott and Paul? What am I going to, I can't call them from a jail saying I got arrested for having all these drugs, And I'm rolling, so I'm already freaking out. And so thankfully, our audio guy had taken everything with him. So there was nothing in the actual car. But, they pretty much strip searched me and everything. And I was like, the money you need to bribe people with. I'm like, I had $300 in my pocket. I'm like, well, they're going to take that, or I'm going to give that to them because I don't want any trouble. But miraculously, they took nothing. They were like, okay, sorry, and just let me go. But I was dying. But that whole thought, I was like, Scott's going to fucking kill me. Scott's going to kill me. How am I going to explain this when I'm arrested in a jail?
For sure. I remember when you guys were going to Ibiza, and I remember that's going to be, because the crew that went on that trip, I just remember that's going to be a big trip. And again, it was just, Ibiza was so big at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody was traveling over to Ibiza to do just that, And didn't you guys find one of your tapes in the street the next day, or
Probably. I think we did lose something because I think it was audio's job to take. And maybe
that never made sense.
I feel like we had made the audio person always carry our shot tapes.
Back when,
because there was
for the listener, there were no digital tapes then. It was all analog. They were 3/4-inch tapes, from what I remember, or beta tapes. And then there's beta digital.
Were they
but they were
30
still
or a
tape.
minute or an hour?
They were an hour.
They were an hour.
But it was still
We'd had to-
physical tape, and they're pretty big. And to go through an airport with 18 tapes was a pain.
Yeah.
And
we
you don't
had
want to
fly
lose
out with
them.
That was my.
You wanna
I
guard 'em
kept
with
a
your
separate
life.
backpack that
Yeah.
was just tapes. I didn't let them
Yeah.
out of my sight.
Well,
No.
I learned the hard way. As soon as you're done with the shoot day, it doesn't matter what anyone says, and you've got that backpack of 18 tapes or whatever it is. Get to your hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
Put them in the hotel room. Then go out and meet people for dinner or a party
Yeah.
or whatever. Because when I was in Prague. It wasn't for Wild On, but although we used some footage in a Wild On, of course, because they're always cannibalizing footage from other shows. I was there for Style Network and for E! News, some film festival going on. Anyway, this gentleman who kind of ran things there and ran the club that we were going to shoot at said, "Come with me." And I'm like, "Well, let me just go to my hotel. I've been shooting all day at this restaurant, and I've got like 12 tapes." "Oh, no, you do that after. Come. And so I went in this restaurant, and he surrounded me with all these, models and champagne. I remember the bill was $3,500 for just like drinks and just hors d'oeuvres. And I'm wasted by that point. It's like 7 p.m, 8. And I just merrily go on my way to the club with him after. I'm dancing and having a good time. I'm meeting my crew there. They said, we'll meet at the club. I'm like, God, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, yeah, it's the tapes. My whole backpack full of tapes, a whole day, probably 2 days worth of shooting in there, everything. And I didn't remember the name of the restaurant, and the guy I was with was gone, and I was in a sheer panic. Actually, it was later in the night at this point. They were closed, the restaurant. Long story short, I somehow found my way to the restaurant because I realized I picked up a business card instinctively when I left the restaurant when I was there, just out of habit.
Right.
And I reach my back pocket, and there's the name of the restaurant. So I show it to the guy who doesn't speak any English. He drives me there. They're closed. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm fired.
Yeah.
It's over. I mean, I had one job, which was like shoot this footage, hold on to these tapes. I couldn't even do that, and I told myself at the time, I need to get back to the hotel, and I didn't listen to that inner voice. And I looked through the window, and there was a janitor in there who was sweeping up, and I'm pounding on the window like the end of The Graduate, like Elaine. And I'm like, please, and they're like, what? And I'm pointing, and he's confused, and then he's like puts a finger up and goes into the kitchen. And comes back out, and he's holding my backpack.
Oh.
And it was really heavy, and I knew the tapes were in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I almost like fainted out of like relief.
One of my wildest times was, so Brooke her Playboy had just come out. Oof. And so her fame was huge. And this was our trip to Greece. And super excited because we were doing Greece, we were going to do the Greek Isles, we were going to go to Mykonos, all that stuff. But we were kind of splitting Brooke. She was doing she was leapfrogging because you were in Cyprus.
I was in Cyprus. She came to me, and then
so Carrie met up with us.
Yeah.
And so we had started in Athens, but Carrie met up with us in Corfu. And so Corfu's in the Ionian Sea, which is a little further north. Beautiful water. It's an amazing place. But I found this place called the Pink Palace. And I was like, this place looks amazing. It's about partying. It's kind of like a youth hostel on steroids. And the story goes that this guy, he calls himself Dr. George. I think it's a self-given title. I don't think he's got a medical degree. But he basically bought a piece of property on this beach in Corfu, had a bar, and just started building it up. But he turned it into like a poor man's like J.W. Marriott. It's like this huge, expansive compound. It's all pink. And he has this toga party once a week. He hands out everybody pink togas, and you're drinking pink ouzo.
Yep.
Now this thing is going to be great, but we get there. First, Dr. George rolls out the red carpet to us. He takes us out to dinner, and he dubs Brooke goddess for the week. And he's very very theatrical. This guy, and he's filled with his own hubris and ego. And but we're there for the toga party, and you could feel the energy build in this place. And word gets around that we're there, and it just becomes electric. Like the whole place is just like ready for us to, show up. We get there and it's like, Brooke, and this isn't like Cosmopolitan Travelers. This is,
College kids.
Yeah, it's college kids
Yeah.
and, backpackers and stuff. And they're young kids, but they're very aware of the show and they're just amped up, and it just kind of heightened everything. And so the show begins. This guy in a ponytail who's wearing too short of a toga. It's kind of like the wrong vibe. He's kind of overseeing all the whole operation, but just the ponytail is already kind of given, sending a bad message. He's gyrating on the floor to another brick in the wall for like you know, a good 10 minutes. We're like, what is this? And they're passing around ouzo shots. Everyone's doing ouzo. Then Dr. George makes his appearance. By the way, I tell everybody, you should look this up on YouTube. You can still find it. He's still doing this man. And he was not a spring chicken back then, you know? And he comes out, and we're now like, you know, the guests of honor, which means we get to sit close on the floor, the sticky, gross floor. And he comes out, and he starts dancing to Zorba the Greek. You know, you hear if you've ever been to a Greek restaurant, you know the music. And he's going around doing shots ouzo, and he puts out a table in the middle of the floor, stacks of like salad plates, you know, 20 high, just fills the table. You do a shot of ouzo, he smashes a plate on your head. He's smashing plates on their head, smashing their plates on their head. But everybody wants to get a shot with Brooke. Everybody wants to get a photo. Everybody wants to do a shot with Brooke. And but she's getting tanked. We're all getting tanked because everybody's giving us shots, and we're doing, you know, plates are getting smashed on our heads. But the big finale is he brings out Brooke. Well, actually, he did something amazing. The weird ponytail guy lit the table on fire. This is not a light table, by the way. This thing is heavy. Dr. George, still dancing Zorba the Greek style, comes out with the table on fire, lowers down, grabs it in his teeth, and lifts the whole thing up and is dancing around with his teeth. And it's pretty amazing, actually. I was pretty impressed. Drops the table, pulls Brooke into the circle, puts her down on her knees, and he grabs a stack of plates, like probably 15 deep. And he says, just like, sit straight up. And he smashes this whole thing on her head, cuts Brooke in the head. But she's too hammered by this point to really feel it. She's like, I think I'm bleeding, you know? Whoa. And she's like, I think you need to get me out of here. And rightfully so. I was like, yeah, let's get you out of here. We kind of rush her back. Everybody's kind of grabbing at us, though. We rush her back to the back of this place and just kind of get our bearings. And it was like, all right, we got to make a mad dash out of here and just get her home because, like, we just got so wasted at this place. But it was like, that's when I really felt the sense of our show. And like, oh, this thing's like, it's got legs. Like this thing is like, it had a whole audience. And when I really felt like, cause this was like a crowd, like chanting her name and they all knew it. And like the popularity of that show was really picking up.
It starts feeling like a little unwieldy at that point too, like a runaway truck without brakes.
Totally. Yeah. You know, we were all feeling the popularity of Brooke and, you know, being protective of that. You know, and it was always kind of like, we were always kind of riding this knife's edge of like, you know, I think Carrie, myself, there was you know, we were thinking about our career post Wild On and not wanting to get fired. So you're always kind of riding this line of like, got to get the stuff, got to get the shot, got to get my material, get the story, get out. But you're also trying to like, you're in this world of craziness and you're trying to experience that while you're there because you've only got one shot to ever come back to this place and have this experience.
Yeah. Well, it was fascinating how quickly it took off, Wild On, in terms of the visibility of the show, not just nationally, but internationally. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all had experiences where people recognize us on shoots because we turn the camera on, we'd break the fourth wall and show how the sausage is being made, or there was a reason for us to kind of be in the scene to kind of like document what was going on, or we didn't have talent that day, so we're trying to carry the load, or whatever it might be, because you have to come back with 50 minutes of content,
right?
So in an hour show, it'd be edited in 2 weeks. You got to fill it up with content, and so people start recognizing your face. And I think even more so by the time I had left and you guys were kind of on the show still in the early 2000s, it was a juggernaut at that point.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. And you really did need security sometimes.
Yeah.
And,
we never had it.
Never had it. Yeah.
Once in a blue moon at the club.
No, but I signed autographs in Vegas. They recognized me. You were really the first to kind of set the mold for that to, where a lot of times, we would make deals with Playboy or, Perfect 10 was a thing back then, or whatever, all the lad mags, and we might be set up with a model or an agency to provide a host when Brooke couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't show. And you really were the first to kind of appear on camera in lieu of a host, which became kind of a thing for us because they would drop out and we would have to appear in these shows.
Or if they wouldn't drop out, we'd be told by our bosses, go shoot, let's say in Italy. I had to shoot there for 4 or 5 days. You're getting Jules for 1 day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You get her in Naples.
Right.
I was like, okay, Naples, it's the birth of pizza. We're going to do a shoot behind the scenes of the 500-year-old pizza place that invented pizza, and then we'll take her to a nightclub, and I'm going to do the sea caves of Capri. That was a full day with Jules.
Right.
What do I do the other 3 days?
Right.
Well, yeah, whatever it is, I've got to come back with about 10 minutes worth of footage. So me and the crew went to Elba. I said, look, I'm going to have to just like jump in the fire here. Turn the camera on me, and I think the whole story here is me trying to find someone on Elba who speaks English. And I went about it. I figured this won't work unless I'm very self-deprecating, which wasn't hard to do because I still don't feel very highly of the way I look. I was wearing, shorts and with pasty legs and like a bucket hat, some like kind of suntan oil under my eyes. I look like an idiot, like from Revenge of the Nerds or something. So I would interview a woman or a couple, and they would say something, kind of blow me off. Oh, and by the way, they're topless. So right there, we achieved the skin that the network wanted, and we just mosaic it, in the edit room. Right. And I also was kind of encouraged to do that by our very open-minded bosses, John Reiber and Scott Woodward. They said, if you're ever in a pinch, you don't have the host or host drops out, look, show us how it's done. And if you have to be in front of the camera, that's okay, as long as it's warranted. Yeah. And it was warranted, I thought then.
No, and I think that became, it opened it up for producers sometimes to feel they could.
Sometimes it went too far.
Yeah, they could just now put themselves into scenes. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you. First of all, for spring break, I had to do 3 in a row because I got punished.
Punished?
Yeah. I pitched to Scott, our boss. We were doing spring break, and I had to do 3 in a row because I don't know if you'll ever remember this. I went to Mindy Herman and told her how bad the morale was at E.
Mindy Herman was the president of the
E
company at the time.
I don't know why. I thought I'd be the spokesperson for everybody. Because I remember they were like, you have to be at your desk at 9. And I'd be like, we edit till 2 a.m. Like, we edit from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I'm not coming in at 9 if I have to edit at 6,
Yeah.
So Scott punished me by just giving me the worst shows because I was supposed to go to South Africa with Chad.
Oh,
and I got taken off of that, and you got put on.
That was an amazing show.
Yes, I'm sure. At least I got to go later in my life.
He's over
don't worry about it. But I remember pitching Scott, and we were Ross Diamond, who was another producer who worked with all of us. That was like, we were probably 25 at the time. We weren't even that far out of college. And it was like, well, if we're going to go produce Spring Break, can we hang with these kids? And that became the story of whether we could still hang with the Spring Breakers. And then that led to us being on camera all the time and being stupid and then doing the most ridiculous things. But one thing I wanted to ask you, you said you came in. Most of us went to college together and we were friends. Was that hard for you to come into a situation like that? Because I remember it was like, hey, that's the kid who can run up the wall and do a flip. Because we were like, hey, you were on the male cheerleader squad at USC.
This will be edited out. So when I worked I interned at VH1, and it was VH1 West Coast at the time, and we were doing Behind the Music before there was Behind the Music, and I used to be able to do a flip off the wall.
Wow.
And so, like, people would be bored, like, Sean, do a flip. And I could run and do a flip off the wall. And so that reputation then carried over when I got my job at E. But, coming in, I felt there was you guys, you, Chad, Ross, Fro. Schumann. Yeah, you guys were already a tight-knit crew. Felt a little hazing. But at the same time, we were getting a master's degree in production and, how to make something out of nothing. Yeah. And we were thrown into these wild environments at times, and we're young, having a good time, partying. And so that all brought us really close together, I felt like, at the same time.
Yeah. Because we were all around the same age. You were a tad bit older. But not much.
But I was, once I became the supervising producer in the summer of '99, as I told you guys, I would start putting myself on the shows that were more cultural, Bali, Brazil, like out the Fortaleza, not even like, the Carnival stuff. Because also I thought those were more of a challenge to come back with good material. And I thought, well, I'm a little more senior. I might as well take those. But also I could see the direction the show was going. Yes, early on, John Reiber is the one who came up with a ratio for Wild On, which is, it should be like 30%, culture, 30% like food, and lifestyle and like 40% like kind of sexy nightclubs and everything. And this whole ratio that I adhered to.
Yeah.
And also I was always seeking story, and
Yeah.
I think that's one thing he liked about when I went out with Jules and with Brooke early on. It was like, what's the beginning, the middle, and the end of this segment, right? And then after a while, there'd be these best on wild ons, which would typically were during spring break or the
those.
wildest
Yeah.
shows, and those went through the roof ratings wise, and
Yeah.
I could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
When I thought I need to kind of at some point exit this franchise, I see where this is going,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not clean, sexy fun anymore. It's over the top sexuality, right? And so those spring break shows went through the roof. And I remember being in Elba. I was just talking about Elba. I got a phone call from Scott. Like it was midnight in Elba. Woke me up. Chad and I were in the hotel room, and he's like, "Hey, just letting you know, spring break got like a 1.25. It's highest rated wild on ever." I was like, oh, okay, that's great. Wait, who's this? Oh, hey, Scott, what's up? It's like, it's 12:25 a.m. here. Oh, great. Listen, story's great and everything, but, that show proves, wet T-shirts are good, too.
Yeah.
I was like, good night, Scott.
Yeah.
Well, the subtext of clean, sexy, fun to me was always get the good stuff, because I think in the back of their minds they wanted to do Too Hot for TV DVDs as well.
Yeah.
I think they were having that conversation.
Yeah.
It never materialized because it ultimately didn't last that long. So, Paul, you were saying that you had to get the next show on the air pretty quickly.
Yeah, once Brooke was hired and everyone agreed she should be the next host of Wild On, it was determined that that next shoot that she would be on would be Spain, Wild on Spain, and that was the show that I was going to do. And they wanted me to do it because it was going to be our first shoot with Brooke, and as the senior producer, I was going to help break her in and kind of really coach her. But I was really nervous because she'd never done a show like this. She'd only been a photo model. So I had some trepidation. I was nervous. And so I think it was John Reiber who said, listen, Todd Newton does stuff for us. Todd was a personality at E who you'd see him on the red carpet doing segments for news, kind of like a jack of all trades as a host. He's fantastic. And he said, let's bring Todd also. And so Todd, fortunately, has joined us on the show to talk about those days. Hey, Todd.
Hey,
Hey,
Mr. Newton.
Great to see you, boys. Look at us. None of us have aged a bit. 27 years. What are y'all talking about? Huh? It's great to be here. Congratulations on the podcast. This is very cool. I'm just enjoying you three amigos reminiscing here. Yes. The thought of a young Sean Olsen doing shots with the Swedish bikini team just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, we just started talking. We just thought we had a lot of fun stories, and we thought, we actually started writing stories about it, and we said we should just do this.
Yeah, because, it's like any worthwhile memoir or memories you don't want to see lost to time, because this is important stuff, Todd.
Yeah.
Who's going to remember these stories? And we don't have an oral history of it.
And they're the kind of stories that when you try to tell them to people who weren't there, they just can't grasp the magnitude of it and the magic of it. So it's great you're doing this.
Yeah. Now, do you remember the circumstances behind it? Would have been August 1999. Brooke was just hired, has not done a shoot yet. All we've done is like a little audition tape at Muscle Beach with her. A camera crew joined us in Spain, including an audio guy named Pepe, I remember. They barely spoke English. And you came along with Brooke. And you were a godsend because not only did you help train Brooke how to host a show, but you made all of us relax. You made me relax just being like your normal self. Do you remember the circumstances when you're going?
I do. That's very kind of you to say. Those years at E were magical. I've said many times since that we were all given the gift of being able to fall on our face and learn from our mistakes with zero repercussions. And there wasn't any place else in the world of television that would allow you to do that. And so that made me feel at ease. And the wonderful thing about Brooke, as I recall, was when the camera wasn't rolling, she was just a complete sweetheart. And she's very personable and very funny, and certainly one of the guys, to use a term, that I think is applicable here. And all that needed to happen was for the world to see that on camera. And when we would do a two-person stand-up with both of us on camera, or when you put her someplace where she was really comfortable, it did not take long for that persona to kind of radiate. And I think that's why people fell in love with her, and it was a great launching pad for her to what's been an incredible career.
Yeah.
For sure.
We also initially we were doing simple stand-ups in Barcelona at a tapas restaurant on the beach, and then we got word while we were in Barcelona about this festival happening in Buñuel. I think it was Buñuel. It was in the province of Valencia, a 2-hour drive, and not on our schedule, but it was the Tomatina Festival.
La Tomatina, right.
La Tomatina. And so this was the time of year, August, when the tomato festival is over. They still have this festival. It has to be seen to be believed. There's 30,000 people show up each year. They've actually capped it at 20,000 now.
really?
They actually sell tickets to it. Back then it was free. And you go to these several city blocks where they dump out of dump trucks 140 tons of tomatoes that are overripe, that aren't going to be taken to market. And it literally, the streets are swarming with tomatoes, and people are wading through them, picking them up, throwing them, and people just go crazy. They're wearing goggles, jumpsuits, like hazmat type shoots. But we weren't prepared for that at all, but we thought that sounds great. And we go down to Valencia to the Tomato Festival with Brooke to cover this. And the two of you, we just kind of throw you literally into the tomatoes. And we're wearing, just normal clothes. And you could probably set up from there.
Well, it on paper, it looks like a lot of fun. Great thing to do on a Saturday afternoon. But as you mentioned, they dump these tomatoes right in the central square there. And then there's a starter pistol, essentially, a shot that indicates it's time to go, and all hell breaks loose. And none of us were expecting it, certainly not Brooke, but it gets really, really rowdy. And it's much more than a casual affair. It's people, complete strangers, if you will, 3 feet away from you, launching these ripe tomatoes right at your face as hard as they can. And it takes you about 30 seconds to realize it's you better react. It's kill or be killed at this. And it got pretty nasty. And Pepe, you're right, was the audio man. Our camera guy was a big old Aussie named Graham Steele.
Yep.
If you remember Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we all worked with Graham.
Australian fella who was perfect to have there at the time. And he quickly got down on his knee and he said, "Cover me. I gotta put a tarp on top of this camera, or else I'm not going to get a shot." So he masterfully was able to weave his way through this just onslaught of. It was like a pagan ritual what was happening there, because instantly everyone's covered in tomatoes. But he didn't get a single tomato on his lens, and he was able to get the shot. And Brooke was really overwhelmed, as we all were. And I remember we ducked into this alley, and this very sweet older woman was up in her balcony watching everything, and allowed Brooke to go up and kind of watch from a safe distance, while Graham and I just went down and dove headfirst into this nonsense. And it was, it was pretty wild for a couple of, I come from the Midwest, Missouri, born and bred, and Graham's from Australia, from the outback. So we don't take kindly to people pushing us around and throwing things in our faces. And it got pretty testy at a couple of points. And it was a lot more than any of us bargained for. We didn't think that was coming when we woke up that morning. But hey, man, as we used to say at E all the time, we got the shot. And that's all that matters. We got the footage.
We got the shot, and like the name of the show, Wild On, it truly lived up to its name. It was wild.
Yeah.
It was the wildest shoot I've ever had. And, looking back, these people were probably day drinking since dawn, so all the people who, and then when we were kind of done.
By these people, you mean the gentleman on your right and left there? Is that who you're referring to?
That's right.
The Valencians.
I never drank on a shoot. What are you talking about, Todd?
No,
Came with the job.
No.
So I've
The
seen
Tomatina participants.
I've seen the festival a few times. there are certain people that are up in like trucks. They're like in
Yeah.
beds of like who gets to decide who are in the beds of
Yeah,
tomatoes
to be in the truck.
yeah.
I think you'd have to ask those people.
The alphas.
Yeah.
The alphas just climb the truck.
People from a much better network who had more money.
There's a tradition apparently at the end of the festival, because it ends as quickly as it begins. It ends with another starter pistol, and people just kind of stop. And I remember there was this American family, a mother, father, and two small kids, and the look on his eyes was just, it was complete panic. That's my cat Wild On right over here. That's named him Wild On. We call him Whoa for short. But the look on that father's face said everything. And the tradition at the end of the La Tomatina is, if you see someone whose clothes have been completely covered and essentially ruined, then it is customary in Valencia to just walk up to them and rip the shirt right off of that individual. Well, Graham and I were certainly not made aware of that custom. So when we had a group of young Valencian gentlemen come up and try to rip our shirts off, that didn't go over very well. And I think a portion of that scuffle made it into the episode, if I remember correctly.
It did, because,
That's
thinking
scary.
like a producer, I'm like, let's get the shot. We need to get this. As they're trying to rip off Todd's clothes. And then later, Brooke, when she came down, at that point in time, she was in a full extra large men's T-shirt. I think that's all she was wearing, because everything else was ruined. Yeah. And she had gotten help from the neighbor up there. Chad was hosed off by a neighbor and was wearing his boxers the rest of the day. His boxers and a shirt, and he was barefoot. And I was picking tomato seeds out of my ear, but even 2 weeks later in LA when I got back. But we got some of that in the show and in the van with you and Brooke talking about it. And I think that whole experience really helped bring Brooke into this world. We'd been through the war together. And I think, I don't want to say it loosened her up, but she saw, like, this is, you got to really think on your feet, and it's not scripted. This is unfolding reality.
Well, I think also she saw that we were a cool group of people and that we weren't taking ourselves too terribly seriously. We realized what we were doing. That was the beauty of E! I still get people coming up to me today talking about how much they loved E! During that time, because we were so different from Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, even the red carpet stuff, and that's nice, because we were just having fun, which is what television is supposed to be, and which is the reason we all got into this. But I think it was that event in Spain that we all came together kind of as the Wild On tribe, and as the franchise kind of branched out, and we would do 3 or 4 episodes at one time, regardless of who your producer was or who you were co-hosting with. You always knew you were going to be taken care of, not only on camera, but I think as Brooke learned on that episode, you'd be taken care of off camera as well.
Yeah. And I have to give a credit to you also to loosen me up there, because it was, as I said earlier, it was great that you helped kind of shepherd Brooke into this world. But as you mentioned, we'll go to these places and you have a local crew sometimes. They don't necessarily speak English, so it's hard to communicate with. I remember being in like Prague, and like the cameramen would, or maybe when you're in Russia, they would just drink beer during the day. That would be unthinkable for a United States crew. You're like, hey, buddy, you can't do that. You're off the show. And I remember kind of judging Pepe as like, this guy is smoking just going to get a microphone. He lights up a cigarette and we have to wait on him. And so I started getting annoyed by Pepe. And I think it was just like, I got a show to put together here. And we're like on, Spain time, right? He's on a siesta, it seems like, all the time. But he was a hard worker and he worked. And you broke the ice with Pepe, and you decided this guy's a rock star. And he looked like a Spanish Don Knotts. I remember it's kind of like... And so I was like silently judging Pepe, and you're like, Pepe is the man. And so you start singing Backstreet Boys with him, and now I'm getting drunk with Pepe, and I'm like, I love you, Pepe, and I have my arm around him. And things are so smooth after that, because you helped me not take myself so seriously and have fun with the crew and let them work on their terms, and they'll work better because of it, because of the local customs. And you really helped me with that. And I always took that lesson for future shoots in other countries, there are other Pepes.
Well, I appreciate I appreciate that. You know, I don't know if word of this story ever got back to you guys. I've told several Wild On folks over the years, but about 10 years ago, I was on Cape Cod. It was late spring, and there was a big charity event in Provincetown, and Anthony Bourdain was the guest of honor. And I became a huge Anthony Bourdain fan. You know, Wild On really lit my sense of wanderlust, as I'm sure it did in all of you guys as well. And so when I had the opportunity to get 3 minutes with Anthony Bourdain, I told him how much I appreciated his work and introducing us to not only new places but new cultures, and really getting in there and speaking to the people and learning about the food and the history of the food and the significance of everything that happens in these beautiful cities around the world. And I told him I had the opportunity to work on a travel show many years ago, and he asked what it was called, and I told him it was called Wild On the E! Entertainment Network. And he was familiar with it, and he said, you know what I liked about that show is he said, none of you did cookie cutter shoots. None of you got out there and just said, here's a beautiful waterfall. It's 42 feet tall and the pressure per pound of the water square inch. You know, he said there was nothing cookie cutter about that. And I really enjoyed that. And I took that as a huge compliment, because I think in the back of our minds, subconsciously, we were all very much aware of the fact that we were being seen in all these different countries, and we wanted to do something cool. But that meant a lot, because I think that's what set us apart in every aspect of E's programming, the original programming.
I would like to think he was being sincere, because, you know, rewind back to those days when you were helping us on the show. And during that time, I remember being in one of our production meetings with John Reiber, and someone had their laptop open, and they knew someone at the Travel Channel, which at the time was doing very slick travel shows with like nice tracking shots of waterfalls, and telling you the pounds, the dissolves, and the pounds per square inch of this waterfall. All the things that you mentioned are can be boring to a viewer. And it was like the lifestyles of the rich and famous, like lifestyles of the rich and famous, and you know, you're detached from it, right, instead of like immersed in it. And the head, a high-ranking executive at Travel, had sent an email to this person's friend who worked there, and other employees at Travel said, we need to be like Wild On. We're becoming too static as a channel, and we need to kind of think outside the box more and have a little more attitude, or something like that.
For sure.
Well, I believe that, and I've never produced. I always left that to you guys, but I always believed that my role as a host was to be the liaison, to be the kind of the eyes and ears of the person watching at home, whether it was a red carpet movie premiere and here's Kevin Costner. What does that person back in Illinois or Iowa or down in Kentucky, what would they ask Kevin Costner? And with the travel shows, Wild On, that was exactly what I tried to do there, whether it was Barcelona or any of these exotic destinations that the majority of the world will never get to or take the time to go visit. So it's our job to kind of show you what's down this side alley over here, or let's order this dish from the menu that not too many people order, but it's the house specialty. It's what means the most to the chef, and why, and that's where the real story is. Everybody in every place has a story, and I think we did a really, really good job of digging deeper than most people on television cared to or dared to, and that's what set us apart.
And you kind of took some of that into what you're doing now, right? That experience. It's kind of led to I know you have multiple gigs, but yeah.
Yeah. So I started a YouTube channel called The Tattooed Traveler, where I've just gone all over the world, and I've met with chefs and locals and tattoo artists to learn about the art of tattooing worldwide. And back during COVID, a friend of mine who works for Roku picked it up and put it on Roku, and now it streams in 12 countries. And Woe here is very excited about that. He's very proud. But yeah, my wanderlust, my desire to see as much of this big beautiful world as possible was born with Wild On. Again,
Yeah.
I came from Missouri, man, and before I came to E, a fancy vacation meant going to Disney World with my brother and a couple of cousins. E opened all of this up to me, this entire world, and I like to think that we did that for some of our viewers too.
For sure, and it leaves a mark with you. I think that wanderlust that we all got from that show, it stays with you.
Yeah.
You want to keep exploring and keep traveling and keep doing all that. And to touch on something that Paul said, Todd, is that E was a great place where you could learn and allowed you to explore, and certainly allow you to fall on your face at times. And one of my very first shoots with Wild On was with you. I don't know if you remember. We went to New Orleans together with Silver. And
who says hello to all three of you, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
Please tell her hello.
Yeah, tell her hello. And so Silver, for the listener, was a producer in Wild On who eventually married Todd and sired his children. And and so we were all down in New Orleans together.
And my seed.
I was looking through my photo album, Todd. We have a photo. You and I are in tuxedos down there. I don't know what event we went to, but we're in tuxes. I don't think there was never one other instant
Sean,
I needed a tuxedo. Yeah.
It was Mardi Gras.
It was.
We went down for Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And you may recall this, Sean, but you met a gentleman who had a balcony right on
Yes,
Bourbon
and I was going to get to that story. I was wondering if you remembered this story.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll
No,
let you tell it.
no,
Yes,
please.
I'll
I want to
let you
hear
tell
your version of it because I was just telling these guys it earlier. But yeah, please tell the story from your perspective.
Well, so Mardi Gras is just one big party from sun up to sundown and everything in between. And the first location that you secured for us was a Playboy party, which was great. That was fun in an old brownstone. And then this gentleman who recognized us, because that E mic flag, the little square that we had on our microphones, man, nothing drew more attention in the late 90s than that E mic flag. People could see that thing from blocks away. And this gentleman and a couple of his friends came up and they said, listen, we have a balcony up here on Bourbon Street. If you'd like to come get that camera angle, you'd see everything. So, of course, we jumped on it.
Yep.
And when we got the shot and we were ready to leave, we hit a speed bump. Would you like to pick up the story?
So there's a few other details in that. So a lot of times when we would show up to work in the office, you were just presented like, oh, by the way, you're going to be shooting with X, or you have a free treat. You're going to the Bahamas this weekend. So because somebody was paying for it.
Yeah.
And so we were going to New Orleans and Perfect 10 had arranged, I think, for that balcony.
That's right. Perfect
and so
10. Okay,
we were meeting.
Yeah.
So this is the era of Lad Mags, and the Perfect 10 was they were all natural beauties, right? And so the shoot was we're meeting up with.
Of course. Sure.
Yes, yes. And so we're meeting up with Perfect 10, and they're gonna just throw stuff off the balconies, like beach balls, necklaces, all that stuff. And so and we get up there, and you wisely were detaching yourself from the fray. But this guy comes up to me, confronts me, and he says, look, I don't want any trouble. If there's any trouble here, look, if I get fined, I'm going to come after you. And look, I can have you killed. And he threatens my life. He literally is like pushing me up against a wall and telling me he's like, I could take you around this back alley and have you killed and throw your body in the Mississippi River and nobody would ever know about it. And I was like, all right, buddy. Okay. And so I was like, we don't need to shoot. We're out of here. We can leave. He wouldn't let us leave at that point. He decided he was going to block, which made no sense.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to leave.
Right. And he wouldn't let us leave. And it was just such a bizarre occurrence. I think we threw some stuff off and just got out of there because the guy was so bizarre. But that was a really interesting. My first time having my life threatened on a shoot. Yeah,
First time. There are others.
yeah.
There was a lot of guerrilla television involved.
Oh, for sure.
With Wild On, which added to the wild flavor of it. While other shows like the ones you mentioned on Travel Channel, I'm sure, were busy getting permits and securing locations. we would just run down the street with that camera and let it roll. And nobody ever got hurt. Nobody ever got disrespected. But the content that we were able to get back to Los Angeles, and essentially that you guys edited into these one hour shows, was so memorable. And you talk to anybody in their 40s or 50s right now, they remember Wild On fondly, man. It was their weekend guilty pleasure before you could go on your phone and find just about anything anywhere. So we were really, I like to think we were doing a public service, gentlemen. That's
thank you.
Well,
thank you, Todd.
Also at a time when that wasn't easily available to people because the internet was just coming into being. And this was people's windows into the world. And we do little factoids in the show, little lower third.
That's right.
Chirons.
That's
and
right.
I loved making little factoids and putting in little information about it that you may not know. La Tomatina is 200 years old, and it starts. And I loved it, kind of like sprinkling those in. So that was like a whole other additive that we're providing for people that, again, was related to the show, and you normally couldn't get that easily if you're a consumer.
For sure.
I'm curious, hey Todd, what besides the Tomato Festival, what do you think is your fondest memory from Wild? Or what was maybe one of your, funnest or ones that you enjoyed the most?
Well, this one, Carrie, I feel like this one was with you when we did Wild on the Bermuda Triangle.
Of the Hooters.
Was that with you?
Yes.
Well, the Hooters was nice, but I was going to go more. I was going to go to that lagoon that where you glow in the dark when you jump
Puerto
in.
Rico.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And we, you and I were in the boat, and it was cold, and it was in the middle of the night, and Carrie, again, we enjoyed, I think we did a shoot at the Bacardi factory earlier that afternoon.
I forgot that. We went to
we
Puerto
were still
Rico.
enjoying the residue of that. But Carrie said, "Screw it, I'm going in." And he just whips his shirt off and jumps into the glow in the dark algae water. But it was
You needed content.
We did.
You got the story.
That's right. But I love that one because, I now love Puerto Rico, and we were in South Beach for part of that. And I love South Beach and, just interacting with people and meeting new people and seeing the world through their eyes and then relaying it to other people was just a great job to have for a guy who was 30 years old. I couldn't get enough of it. And I felt so fortunate. And, we all knew we were doing something great, and we all knew it wasn't going to last forever. So we were all riding it till the wheels fell off, which was really smart of all of us. I think.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think that was all of our collective philosophy.
Yeah.
Enjoy this ride while it lasts.
Something that good isn't going to last forever, man. So we
No, it did not.
such a gift, such a gift. And the beautiful thing about it, A, is the fact that we got to do it, and B, is the fact that we had the mindset to appreciate it while it was happening.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, buddy. We thank you so much
brother.
for doing this, and it's awesome to see you.
That's great, guys. Well, listen, I wish you a lot of luck. And Sean, do I just invoice you for this, or how does that work?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome,
buddy. Thank you very much, man.
Great seeing you, Todd.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great seeing you, brother. Please.
All right.
Thank you,
Later, buddy.
guys. Good luck to you.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff.
We'll see you soon.
Right
All
on.
right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next time, Wild On gets global. How our little travel show became an international phenomenon, broadcasting in over 150 countries worldwide. We talk about the moment Wild On and Brooke became household names, and the wildest places it took us, from the great white shark diving in South Africa to clubbing in Noriega's former torture dens in Panama, something that actually happened to me, and all the drugs in between. That's all you, Paul.
Right down the line.